Hi there, welcome to our second Changemaker Live here from Emerge Hub co-working space on International Avenue in southeast Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Changemaker Live is an online live streamed interview and conversation with the local YYC Changemaker, and it's filmed here in our co-working spaces on International Avenue. Emerge Hub is a co-working innovation space in southeast Calgary. We value people and their ideas, supporting individuals from generation up to execution of their projects, business plans, or change-making actions. We offer co-working environment, networking opportunities, creative and entrepreneurial development, discounts to local businesses, incubation, breakout spaces, office amenities, and on-site business and creative support. For more information on our space and programming, please visit www.emergehub.ca. So as you see, there's people coming and going behind me. So there's Larry from 12 Community Safety Initiatives. And so we are here today to talk to Katia Letizia. So Kate Letizia was born and raised by two progressive and inspiring parents in Calgary, Alberta, and has since devoted her life to building and refining an arsenal of knowledge and tools related to co-generating positive, lasting change. She has a Master of Science in International Development and Natural Resource Management, and years of experience studying and reframing waste and non-conventional forms of employment in Mexico, Peru, Sweden, the Philippines, and Calgary. In Calgary, this work resulted in the development of a nonprofit called Calgary Can, which focuses on reducing waste and improving recycling opportunities in Calgary by collaborating with the local bottle picking communities. So I'd like to introduce everyone to Katia Letizia.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
You probably should have gone over the name pronunciation.
Probably should have asked you that first.
No
yeah. Thanks for joining us. This is super exciting. I mean, this is our second Changemaker Live. We're trying to talk to some really cool change makers, and I think that you're like really diving into exactly what we're trying to encourage people and teach people and inform people through this channel.
Okay.
So let's begin with your personal story. How did you get to Calgary, and how did you get to creating Calgary Can?
Okay. This is always a tough one to tell in a succinct and interesting way, but essentially, I was born and raised in Calgary, and while there are many things that I appreciate about the city and love about the city, there was always this sort of nagging feeling that I didn't necessarily belong, and that I was going to have trouble sort of finding what I needed to find here, if that makes sense. I think a lot of us struggle with that in our youth. And so I knew I wanted to travel and leave the city for a while from a really young age and see what else was going on in the world and find a way to contribute to doing some, I wanted to do some good work somewhere. I didn't know exactly what. And funny enough, as I mentioned in my bio, my parents have been a huge influence on me and have been, they're very progressive and encouraging people. And my mom took me to a documentary one day. She's worked in the environmental sector for a long time, called A Convenient Truth. And this came after Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. And it was about this city in Brazil called Curitiba, and it's this city where they just decided to like go full bore on sustainability a number of years ago. And they looked at it from a really holistic perspective. So it was all about economy and social sustainability as well, and how they all connect. And this one initiative that they did that I thought was so fascinating and just sort of perfect was where they got citizens that lived in neighborhoods that didn't necessarily have reliable garbage collection. So there was issues with garbage in the streets and people weren't recycling, etc. They would get them to do the work of the garbage collecting and the recycling in exchange for like fresh groceries or transit tickets or like all these sort of incentives that also contributed to the local economy or contributed to sustainability. It would have people riding transit more often, which was good for the environment. They would be eating local, like farmers' vegetables and fruits, which contributed to the local economy and also to some health outcomes as well. So they were just, it just seemed to me to be like the creation of such a perfect system where they were having citizens involved in creating a clean environment for themselves, receiving healthy rewards for it, being fairly compensated for it, and it just sort of went around in a loop. I thought this made so much sense, and I loved the idea so much that I wanted to figure out a way to learn more and work in that space. And so I had already been studying international development, knowing that I wanted to get out of the city and do some work in poverty reduction. And I sort of added this layer now of environmental outcomes to my future goals and what I wanted to learn more about. And that ended up shooting me over to Sweden, of all places, to take my master's degree. And I chose to go there because they actually, at the time, unfortunately it's not the case anymore, they paid for me to go do my research in a developing country. And I was able to pick the country and pick the area of work. And I got to go to Peru, all expenses paid, and study an organization there that was working with people that actually lived on landfills or lived in informal settlements that were quite impoverished. And they were sort of scavengers when they first came to the communities, but this organization helped create micro enterprises and legitimize their work and turn them from scavengers to recyclers. And from there was all sorts of outcomes that came, like mental health, physical health, and they made more money. And even in cases where they didn't always make more money from doing the work formally, they were still happier because they were seen as stewards of the environment and community stewards, and they were safer and healthier. And so I was just super struck by this, wrote my thesis on how successful it was, and eventually that brought me to the Philippines for a bit to do similar work, and then back to Calgary to figure out how to start Calgary Can.
Great. And so now,
it's a long answer.
Yeah, no, I mean, can you tell us for our viewers that don't know what Calgary Can is, can you let them know what is Calgary Can?
Definitely. So essentially, Calgary Can, in a nutshell, is an organization that works with Calgary's bottle picking community. We sometimes call them informal recyclers, so I go back and forth a bit. In Vancouver, they call them binners, and so sometimes that term gets used as well. We work with them to figure out how to ensure that their work is more profitable, that it's respected and appreciated by Calgarians, and that they are fairly compensated for their work. So those are sort of some of the big problems, the big challenges that we focus on, and we just sort of work fluidly, developing new ideas and testing them and seeing what will sort of answer those challenges. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, okay, so how did you make, you talked about this idea that the inspiration came from Peru.
Yeah.
From the movie and then from Peru. From the movie and then to Peru, and then you did some work in the Philippines. So that all sort of shifted you a little bit.
Yes.
And then you came back to Calgary, and instead of doing this sort of cookie cutter approach,
yes, you
have tried to create a program or it's a nonprofit, yeah.
Yes.
A nonprofit that's Calgary centric.
Exactly, yeah.
So can you tell me about how did you make this Calgary-centric instead of sort of a Peru, Philippines cookie cutter approach?
Sure. So yeah, I've always done Calgary Can on the side or as a volunteer. So I had other work like to get paid going on at the same time. So when I came home to Calgary, I started working at the Calgary Homeless Foundation and started to see right away that there was a lot of potential for something similar to what I had worked on in the Philippines and in Peru, and studied from all over the world and in Vancouver and other cities in North America as well. There was potential for something like that to happen here. We had lots of informal recyclers, and you could see as an outside observer that things most likely weren't perfect for them, that conditions were harsh, that there was challenges. But I knew obviously that they would be different from the ones being faced by people working on a landfill in the middle of the Philippines, for example. And so what we did was make sure that we approached the community and the challenge really, really openly. When the idea first came up that maybe something like what's going on in those other places could work here, the very first thing we had to figure out was, is there even a problem here to solve in the first place? Or are we just assuming there is? Are we assuming that the work is challenging? Are we assuming that there's stigma and all of these things? And so that was the very first question. We went out on the streets and asked people. And I got a lot of contacts and help from my Calgary Homeless Foundation connections and some research support. And we went out and started just asking people, what is your life like? What are the challenges here with this profession, if any? And had people just openly speak to us about what was going on. We needed to determine if there was a problem in the first place. And certainly there was. And again, we kept all of our assumptions aside about what the solutions might be and solutions that we saw in other cities. We were inspired by them to start the work in the first place, but we didn't want to assume that they would work here. And we started to ask people, okay, how might we fix these problems that you're facing? And bottle pickers started to ask them. And that's how we've worked the whole way through, is that the bottle pickers define their own problems and they define the solutions. And we're just there as supporters or catalysts or resources to help try and make them happen. I think that's sort of how we...
How does that play into the how do you see yourself as a... I mean, Calgary Homeless Foundation has this sort of poverty reduction plan.
Homelessness reduction plan.
Homeless reduction plan. How do you see yourself, fitting into that?
Good question. At the time, I assumed that, like most people would, and incorrectly, that the majority of bottle pickers were homeless in Calgary. And so at the time, I felt like it fit very well. Certainly, the Homeless Foundation was more focused on housing, and I was looking at, essentially legitimizing a form of employment and making it safer and more profitable for people, which are different challenges and you're looking for different outcomes, but they all sort of work toward ending homelessness in the long run. But what I found out, of course, quickly through research and through talking to people on the streets was that the bottle picking community in Calgary is extremely diverse. And that it's not just about homelessness by any means, that there's seniors out there that are supplementing their pensions, or that there's people out there that just don't like working, 9 to 5 with, a boss and authority figures telling them what to do. There's people that need to supplement other forms of income support like AISH, because it's not enough to live on. There's people with addictions. There's people that come from other countries that might not speak English, and so they can't get formal work. And this was something that they might have done in their other country that they're doing here. So we learned really quickly that the problem was it's way beyond homelessness, and that we had to really embrace how diverse the community was and how complex it was as well. So very quickly, it started to become a lot more than just a little thing I was doing on the side from my work at the Homeless Foundation. And it was always quite separate as well. I was doing Calgary Can on my own and working at the Homeless Foundation 9 to 5.
I mean, you bring up a really good point about the stigma of bottle collectors.
Yeah, that they're homeless and addicted typically is the stigma,
Right. And so how do we? What steps are we? Are you taking any steps towards breaking down that stigma, or is there something that is there sort of an awareness that we should have, as a public?
Definitely. When we first started, a lot of the ideas that were bubbling up from the community were related to, the day-to-day logistics of bottle picking, how to make the job, like I said, more profitable or safer or whatever it was. There was always this overarching or underlying need to also create community acceptance. And that was always there, but it wasn't necessarily what the pickers focused on immediately when we came on the scene and started to offer our help. And so at the beginning, that's what we were focusing more on. How do we, maybe make it easier for bottle pickers to exchange their bottles and cans late at night? And we started talking about a mobile bottle depot that would, work after hours as something we might try. Or how do we make them be able to pick up more faster? Maybe we need a new kind of cart, or maybe we need a program that connects people with community members to get bottles and cans. But currently, it's sort of surfaced from the community and from our committee. We work regularly with a committee of bottle pickers as well. That this stigma, these assumptions need to be addressed, and we need to put maybe more effort into it than we had in the past. So certainly it's a problem, and it's a problem that the community notices, and it's a problem that Calgary Can wants to try and solve. And it's something that we've actually decided to focus on in the coming year, like really wholeheartedly and completely. In the past, I'd say all of our work had, like I said, had a bit of a layer. So one example is a program called PICT that we started and piloted last year, where we would connect a bottle picker with a community member, either a resident or a business or an apartment, to go and the community member would call when they needed a pickup of bottles and cans, and the picker would go and grab them from them, whether hand to hand, knock on the door and get them, or they would leave them in a specific place for the picker. And that was addressing, making bottle picking faster and safer for the pickers, but it was also addressing a lack of relationship between bottle pickers and community members, and a lack of understanding of who these people were. And so we were starting to see a bit of a stigma breakdown when people would meet face to face and see that bottle pickers weren't always what they thought that they were. And even if they were what they thought that they were, if they were homeless or addicted or having those sorts of challenges, that they were still a person and they were still doing good work, and that it was important work. And so that was a program that helped break that down a little bit, and now we're focusing on it more in the future.
If you're just tuning in right now, this is Changemaker Live, broadcast live from Emerge Hub co-working space in Southeast Calgary on International Avenue. We're talking with Katia Letizia from Calgary Can. I don't actually know what your tagline is, but
the sort of like couple said the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch, but essentially, from what I'm understanding, is a organization that is trying to break down the stigmas of bottle pickers and sort of make it easier, faster, safer for bottle pickers to pick bottles.
Make a living.
And make a living.
Yeah.
I think the thing, if you do, and to follow up on this, if any of you are watching on YouTube right now, there should be a chat box, I believe, on this side right here, that you feel free to engage engage with our moderator. We have Roxanne behind the scenes here. We never show Roxanne. Roxanne, do you want to turn and say hi? There she is. There she is. That's Roxanne. She's doing our moderating behind the scenes. So if you do have any questions, please post your questions for Kate on there, and we will get to them in a few minutes. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about you a little bit more.
More.
Do you have a role model?
Yes, definitely. I thought about this question for a while, and I think in this context, it's pretty. My role model he's pretty easy to pick. His name is Ken Leotier, and Ken is a gentleman from Vancouver who essentially started an organization called United We Can on the downtown east side that is a bottle depot that's run by the community and run by bottle pickers and employing bottle pickers and supporting bottle pickers and people in the downtown east side, and it's a welcoming and accepting place for them. And it was one of the organizations and movements that definitely inspired our work at Calgary Can beyond my experiences in Peru and the Philippines. Essentially, he was a bottle picker himself, and there was all sorts of challenges with the refund system in BC when he was bottle picking, and he decided to find some resources and take a stand and ask all of his bottle picker friends one day to come and bring all their bottles and cans that didn't have a deposit at the time to a place called Victory Square in Vancouver. It's a pretty well-known downtown square, and dump all their bottles and cans in the square, and he was going to refund them what he thought they deserved, or what the community thought they deserved for the bottles and cans, and make sort of a statement about the deficiencies in the system and about the hard work that bottle pickers do and all of that. And it ended up being way more popular than he thought it was going to be. People were lined up around the block when he arrived, and they created this mountain of bottles and cans in the square, and made a huge statement about not just bottle picking but also waste, and about what an issue that was as well. And it made such it was such a high profile event, and Ken was such a hard worker and community connector that, you know, a bunch of stuff started to fall into place after that, with him sort of advocating for a better refund system and developing United We Can in Vancouver. And we have learned so much from him and his experiences, and he's so open and kind and willing to, you know, sort of mentor other organizations that want to do this type of work. He's even mentored people in South America, Brazil, that do similar work, and has like been wanting to get sort of exchanges going between different informal recyclers all over the world, which is really neat. And I think he's done some of that work before. And essentially, the most important thing that Ken taught us, besides honestly like some of the really helpful day-to-day stuff that pushed us forward really quickly, was that bottles and cans are sort of more the medium. They're not what's really important, recycling, etc. What is really important is about creating spaces for people to deeply connect and to build community. And so we've always kept that in mind when we were doing our work, is that, yeah, the profession itself is important, the recycling is important, and making a living is important, but what we're really trying to do is connect people and connect bottle pickers themselves, so that they have a stronger community and each other to lean on, and then also connect you know, other Calgarians with pickers so that they can start to understand each other better.
I mean, that opens up a whole conversation of what business or nonprofits or creating an organization is all about. You know, like that it's not just about a service
or an outcome.
That there's something about socially integrating people, putting people that wouldn't necessarily talk with each other in the same space.
Yes.
And because of that, breaking down these stigmas, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I have a question that we didn't talk about before.
Mm-hmm.
We did some preliminary talking before, but if you had a superpower, what would that be? Or two. I'll give you two options. You can choose the adventure of superpower. Yes. You can give the adventure of a spirit animal. What would you be?
I asked my husband this question last night, what he thought, and he said, well, you're a raccoon. And I was like, what? Why would I be a raccoon? And he goes, because they're also called trash pandas. And I was like, oh. He's like, because you love trash. And I was like, I guess that works. So I was thinking raccoon trash panda loves trash. I think that's what I would choose as my spirit animal, because I've always been sort of fascinated by waste and by like the hidden opportunities that exist in all of our refuse, or what we consider refuse. This is work that I've done with Calgary Can, and this is work I see the bottle pickers doing all the time. Like, it's not just bottles and cans they're finding and using, and like we've heard people finding like, of course, all sorts of clothes and new things for their wardrobes in the trash, but also like computers and furniture and money, and like it's just nuts what people find. I've always been really fascinated by that and wanted to support, you know, making something out of nothing. And I've also done that in my 9-to-5 work as well, working on circular economy and waste prevention for a while, and doing research on that for the past couple of years. So I really like that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody out there that's listening also identifies as a raccoon, we'd love to hear why. We'd love to hear why you.
They're also super adorable.
Are called a raccoon.
They get a bad rap.
Yeah, they do. I think it's the nighttime part.
Yeah.
It's the nighttime.
I've never actually seen one before.
They eat our trash.
Yes.
But
I don't eat trash. I'm just interested in it.
I don't eat trash. I'm just interested in it. Quote of the day. Great. If we are sitting here, are there any questions? How are we doing on questions from the public yet?
No, not really.
Okay, well, I encourage anybody that does have any questions to post some questions. We do have some people here in the office that are going to maybe consider writing down some questions and handing them over to me. What do you think you've solved?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you've solved with Calgary Can?
That's a really good question and an important one. We've always been all about having a clearly defined and community-owned problem to solve at the forefront of our work. If that doesn't exist, then we shouldn't exist. And so that's been that's always been guiding us is this problem to solve. When it comes to Calgary Can, we've let the bottle pickers define, like I said, the problem or problems that they think need to be solved. And like I said, well, the issues, there's always been a billion of them related to the everyday work or the stigma or whatever it is. Kind of our overarching one has always been about legitimizing and fairly compensating informal work. Their informal work, their work as bottle pickers. And, well, like, do I think we've done that completely and totally? Have we solved the problem? In Calgary, no. I definitely think that we've chipped away at it and made progress. And we've seen it, you know, more anecdotally than in big numbers, with relationships that we've built and with attitudes that have changed, more money that's been made, things like that. We ourselves pay our bottle pickers to work for us on a regular basis, so we've contributed directly to increasing their compensation. But there's a lot more work to be done, of course. Yeah, again, I guess if we'd solved the problem by now, we wouldn't exist any longer. Yeah,
right.
So we're still working on it, but and we've seen some change, but we haven't solved it just yet.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
What do you do to take care of yourself? So you, for a lot of you that don't know it, I just found this out just before the interview, is that Kate has just recently had a baby. So congratulations.
Thank you.
What's the baby's? How old's the baby now?
She's a month.
She's a month.
Her name's Florence.
Florence.
And she's already been coming to Calgary Can meetings and yeah, helping out there. So yeah, it's been quite a trip.
Wow. So what do you do to take care of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's sort of a self-care technique that you do? A lot of change makers sort of, you know, they do all this work in sort of in service to the public.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to sort of, you know, remind themselves.
Yeah.
That to be able to harness that energy and that power and to have real impact, we have to go back to ourselves to make sure that we're taken care of.
For sure.
Also.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I don't know. It's funny, when I started Calgary Can, I kind of always felt secretly guilty because like I thought that this was sort of selfish work for me. I was so fascinated by you know, the waste challenge, by informal work, by all of these issues and the way that they connect environment and poverty reduction, that it felt like a selfish thing. I was doing this because I was interested in it. And that sustained me for a while, like that I was just so, like, you know, one track focused on this stuff, and it was very interesting to me, and I was building strong relationships that were really sustaining me, and everything was going great. But I realized after a while, of course, that, yeah, this work was also for the community, and that I was starting to feel a lot of pressure and a lot of stress when it came down to it. And for anyone that works for a nonprofit organization that's all volunteer run, it is unbelievably challenging. Especially when things are going well and you have lots of stakeholders that want to work with you, and you have lots of funders that want to fund you, and people that want to get involved or have a piece. It's as all volunteers, it starts to get harder and harder because there's just no capacity to do everything that you want to do. And so what I realized that had to be done in order to keep Calgary Can sustainable was, well, first and foremost, make it way more about me, way more than just about me and what I wanted, or about like one person running the organization. And that's why we work in such a sort of human-centered way, bottle pickers first, and getting them to own the work and own, you know, even the organization, and say they're part of Calgary Can and they are Calgary Can, and have them sort of promote it that way, so it wasn't all on one person. But another thing that had to be done that I realized for myself the hard way was to take breaks, which sounds really basic and simple, but I just kept taking more and more and more on, and sometimes I'd have a bit of a breakdown, and it would be harder and harder to come back from it every time. So I realized that before getting to that breaking point and being too busy, too stressed, too full of pressure, I needed to take a step back and take breaks. And so that's something that we've done, is to just halt and think and let other people take over, take the reins, be really fluid that way. And that's been something that has sort of sustained me, is just getting to take a break every now and then. I think the one other way that I've been able to sort of keep my cup full has been through infusing like art and creative practice into our work as much as we can. For example, we took on a big beakerhead project last year, which ended up being quite a lot of work, but it sort of fed our souls to be able to partner with, you know, arts organizations and different types of organizations, and be really creative and not be so serious about, you know, really big important outcomes, but to just do something that was creative and good for the moment, and would teach the people that came and saw it that day and go from there. So that's been something that helps too, is to just sort of infuse that and not to take things too seriously.
I heard you have another project with another arts organization.
Yes, we're starting that again.
You're allowed to announce that?
Of course, yeah. So that's another way that we've been able to step back from the really serious work, not that this isn't, but and do something totally different, is to partner with an organization called Downstage Theatre. Please look them up. They are so interesting. They've done really great work in the past, using arts and theater to bring light to social issues, and doing it in a way that's also very human-centered and grounded in like real experiences. And we've come together to work with them on what we're calling a bottle pickers monologue project, which was the idea of one of our bottle pickers. It might not be monologues. We're still working on what type of theater it will be, but we're partnering with them to work on the stigma problem. Like I said, we're focusing on that this year. And so totally changing the direction of our work, diving into this with them, seeing what comes out of it to inform Calgarians about what bottle picking is like and why it needs to be appreciated instead of feared or seen as a nuisance. So they're going to help us figure that out. And they're working directly with our bottle pickers, committee, and other bottle pickers in Calgary to determine what the show should look like.
Can you tell us about the Hook program?
Oh, for sure, yeah. So the Hook program is another one that we're focusing on this year. Like I said, we're constantly letting new ideas bubble up, testing them out, and going from there. And so this one actually is a funny one. Many bottle pickers in Calgary that we spoke to for the longest time were saying, we need our own bin or something on the side, like a bottle picker's bin that Calgarians can put their bottles and cans into. And so we don't have to dig through the trash to get them out for them.
Okay.
And we thought, okay, let's figure out, let's prototype this bin. What would it look like? How would we afford to build it, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, we've been talking with an organization called the Binners Project in Vancouver. Amazing, another organization you got to check out. They do similar work to us. And they were prototyping a hook, like a stainless steel metal hook that you could hang your bottles and cans on, or other valuable items to leave out for bottle pickers or other community members in need. And we thought, okay, forget the bin. You guys are already doing this hook. Makes tons of sense. Let's do it with you. And so they've sort of lent us the design, and we've bought some of the hooks from them and put our own stickers on it. And we're asking Calgarians to, you know, think about nailing these hooks to their fences, their garages. Businesses can nail them to even straight onto their buildings. It's super simple to install, and to hang their bottles and cans there, or any other items that they think bottle pickers could use. And in doing that, they're sort of creating a safe space for bottle pickers. They see the hook, they see the sticker, they know they're welcome there. They're not going to get yelled at, that the cops called on them for not doing anything wrong. They can be in that space safely. They will get stuff faster because they don't have to dig through. They'll get more, hopefully, because people are supporting them and giving them more refundables to bring in. And maybe they'll get other items of value. So it sort of hits on a few of the outcomes that we're always trying to achieve.
And this is a hook, the physical hook.
Yeah, it's a physical stainless steel hook with a hole in it, so you can nail it to anything. It's got a sticker that sort of identifies like that this is something like, come here, you can take stuff off this hook to bottle pickers. Calgary Can logo on it, and you can purchase it on our website. You just email info@calgarycan.ca and
info@calgarycan.ca. Maybe we can get that up onto the chat. Also, info@calgarycan.ca.
And yeah, you can, as a resident, a business, even an apartment building, you can nail them to your surfaces, and anyone can hang anything they want on there that they think would be of value to the bottle picking community.
Great.
Hopefully lots of bottles and cans.
Great.
And we originally have been piloting this with the HSCA, the Hillhurst Sunnyside Community Association. So thanks to them for, you know, boldly diving in and being the first one to sort of put the hook up on their building and to promote it, and we hope to see it spread much further across the city.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we do have a question here from one of the people that's listening in today or watching it. I'm not sure how relevant it is to Calgary Can, but maybe you could answer this. Is
Sure.
what do they recycle the glass into?
Yeah.
What is it replacing?
Yeah.
Have they looked into construction materials like polywrap and Kelowna?
Interesting question. Yeah. Glass is a really challenging material to recycle, actually, because what happens when we put glass in our blue bins is it breaks. It either breaks right when you put it in the bin, or when it goes to the materials recovery facility, it breaks when it gets dumped out there. And so the city gets left with a bunch of broken glass. And it's kind of dirty, right? Because it'll be all different types of glass. It'll have labels on it and things like that. And it's actually a fairly challenging material to find a market for. I haven't heard about this Kelowna, the polywrap idea. I would like to look into it. I know that one of the common uses for it now is like reflective beads on the road.
Right.
They use it for that. They use it for sandblasting. I think those are some of the two main uses.
So it gets broken down, disintegrated.
Yes.
So it doesn't actually get turned into new bottles.
No.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which people often think
I always
it does.
think
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
glass just gets broken down and made into new
So
bottles.
one thing that we like to tell people when it comes to supporting bottle pickers and with regard to glass is that if you really want your glass to be reused instead of broken, and then we have to find a new way to use it or to recycle it, your best bet is to give it to bottle pickers, because then it doesn't go into the blue bin and it doesn't break on the floor. It gets picked up by bottle pickers and it'll get taken back to the depot. And if that's the type of glass that's getting washed and reused, I think don't quote me on this, there's something like a 20 to 40% of glass is reused, glass bottles are. If that's one of the ones that's getting reused, then you're going up a step in the recycling chain and doing something better for the environment. You always want to reuse before you recycle, right?
Of course.
Much less resource intensive. So we say give your glass to pickers, they'll take it into the depot and it could be reused. Otherwise, in your blue bin, it gets broken and it's not as useful.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I got to say about glass.
So if we're sitting here a year from now celebrating what a great successful year Calgary Can has had, what did you achieve? What would you want to achieve in terms of achieving that vision?
I think in a year, we'd like to see our Bottle Pickers Monologues project with Downstage go well and, be a thing and something in the city that people are excited about and they go see it and it starts conversations about stigma and it opens up people's minds and who knows what that will then lead to for bottle pickers and for Calgary Can and informal recycling. Who knows what will spark in people's minds and how that will shift the mindset of Calgarians. That would be great for that to be a success and something to come of it. So we hope to see lots of people come out to the performances. The hook, we'd like to see all over the city. It's a movement in Vancouver. It's going to be starting in Montreal, I believe, soon as well. There's an organization there called Les Valoristes, and they also work with bottle pickers. They're going to be using the hook. We'd like to see Calgary, kick ass and have tons of hooks all over the place being used for all sorts of different things. And in doing that, seeing Calgarians supporting bottle pickers more and developing stronger relationships. And something kind of boring or technical that we hope to see happen for our organization, but it is a really important thing that needs to happen is we'd like to get a full-time paid staff. And I know that that's not the most exciting goal to have, but people really underestimate how challenging it is, like I said, to run a fully volunteer organization and to not have the resources you need to make all the great ideas that bubble up happen. We've realized recently that that's something that we do need to make that happen. And we're going to be putting a lot of time and energy into finding funding for a full-time paid staff. It's not easy to find. Lots of organizations don't like to fund operations. So we want to see how we can make that happen and grow our operations as a result in the future.
Okay, this is from David Horn, who's an audience member here. And so I'm reading this in real time. So, so one morning while having breakfast, I caught a stranger in my backyard who was about to help himself to the bottles I keep in a box on my back deck. What rules are you teaching your pickers?
Yeah, that's a common concern we hear from Calgarians. Well, the majority of Calgarians we talk to, because we do a lot of research with community members as well, we do a lot of research as an organization out talking to people. And well, the majority of Calgarians definitely support bottle picking. I was surprised. I thought there would be more negativity. This is a challenge that does come up. And I guess I just need to make clear that we don't necessarily teach bottle pickers anything. They're the experts. We're there as like I said, resources. And they're the ones teaching us about the work and about how, the culture and how things happen. And the bottle pickers that we work with would very much speak against this and would call these people bad apples and say that this isn't the majority and that this isn't something that they do or promote. And so, and it's certainly not something that we would do or promote as an organization either, because it's illegal, it's trespassing, and it's not something that we like to see. So that's really all I can tell David, is that, hopefully that's not the majority. That's a couple bad apples that are doing things like that. And that, the common code of bottle picking as we've seen it in Calgary is very respectful and clean, and people are trying very much to stay within the parameters of the law because they don't want to cause trouble. They're just trying to make a living like anyone else. And that, hopefully this doesn't happen again.
Okay, great. So we're wrapping up here. It's I think we're running on 45 minutes now. So where can people find out more about Calgary Can?
Yeah, okay. I wrote that down. Not that I need to. It's pretty simple. We are on Twitter at Calgary Can. We have a website, www.calgarycan.ca. Like you said, info@calgarycan.ca is where you can get in touch with us about the hook or anything else if you want to volunteer. We're always looking for new volunteers. If you want to partner or work with us on a project, we're super open to that as well. And then we're also on Instagram, Calgary_Can. So that's all our social media stuff. And that's how you can get in touch with us and keep in the loop about what we're up to.
Great. Last question. It's not necessarily a question. It's a fill in the blank. This is how we end all our Changemakers, at least ChangeMakerLIVE things, which is our only second one. So we'll make sure this is like set in stone. It'll become a ritual once we do 3. But finally, ask the question. Or fill in the blank. Calgary is
blank. Okay, so I wrote this one down. Calgary is a city where entrepreneurship comes in many different shapes and sizes, and it's time that more Calgarians recognize and respect that.
Interesting. Great. I think we always have an adversity to sort of business and entrepreneurship in Calgary because it's been such a business-based city, mostly in one sector, and so we have this adversity to it.
And we think of business people or entrepreneurs as, someone walking down Stephen Ave in their nice suit with their heels clicking, but like, what makes their work any more valuable than a bottle picker with their shopping cart who's doing really good work for the environment and the community?
Great.
Something to think about.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, Kate.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So much insight. I'm even inspired to listening to you. So,
cool. Thank you.
Now, let's take a quick look at what's going on here at Emerge Hub so that we can you can updated on the events that are happening. So I have a few things here. Next Thursday, we have a what is community economic development. I think you can see that on there. Hopefully you can. And that's going to be from noon to 1. It's a lunch and learn, so bring your lunch. You can come and listen. Yeah, there you go. I think you can see it now, right? So October 19, from 12 until 1 here at Emerge Hub. We also have every Tuesday, we have Mark Shields, who's our project manager here at Emerge Hub, and every Wednesday we have mid-morning yogas. Stay tuned, that day might change, but if you stay tuned to our website or join our e-newsletter or follow us on Eventbrite and our many other social media channels, you can keep up to date on our mid-morning yoga, which happens weekly here at Emerge Hub. So our office space is not just for sitting down at a desk and for 8 hours a day. We also have on October 25th an event called Negotiating Commercial Leases and Renewals for Dummies. The author of the book is going to be here, and you can meet him and learn 13 costly mistakes commercial tenants make negotiating a new commercial lease or renewal. This session will prove invaluable to both first-time and existing commercial tenants. And finally, but not least, because it seems like we always have so many events happening here and so much programming happening, remember that for the most part, most of the events at Emerge Hub are free. And so if you are interested in attending any of the programming, you're more than welcome to come and attend. Again, check out our social media websites. Our social media website, www.emergehub.ca, and on there is a calendar of events that happens. But last but not least, we have Brewing Beats, which happens October 20th from 6 till 9 p.m. here, and we're literally going to transform this office space into a giant social. So it's our Brewing Beats co-working social. Monthly, we open up our space. The hope is to create a relaxed, non-work environment. We add in some music, food, and drinks, and from there we hope that ideas fly. So we're hoping that people crash into each other and collaborations spark off in the midst of an event. Come hang out with your next collaborator. DJs, if there are any DJs out there, we have open decks for you to play. If you're interested in trying out something new, then come early and sign up for your set on the tracks, or on the decks rather. Everybody else, dress however you want, and come prepared to meet some new friends. So yeah. You can read more about us and register for any of the events that I've listed here at emergehub.ca, and also sign up for our e-newsletter, The Rise, and get that bi-monthly in your inbox. Thanks everyone who tuned in live or is watching this after the broadcast. We look forward to introducing you to more Calgary changemakers who are making a difference in our city. There are a lot of them. Today we spoke with Katia Letizia from Calgary Can. Please check them out. Thanks for joining us for this second Changemaker Live, and we hope to see you soon. This is Kevin Justino live from Emerge Hub, co-working space on International Ave.